So first thing is, obviously, you've got the calculator as a free app on your phone. So you can download that on iPhone or Android. So you can get the full working calculator straight on there. So you can try before you buy. Second thing is I'm using the online browser emulator that is on their website. So you can use it on there as well. And that's free to use. So I thought what I'd do is like, you know, yeah, come on in. So I thought what I'd do is I'd go through and just show you some bits. Do we have, because we've got some further maths in here as well. Got any other further maths students? Right, okay, so I'll try and like show different bits of that as well. Okay, so I'm just going to focus on the, amazingly, I'm not going to focus on the graphing software just yet. I'm going to start off with just the calculation window. So, you know, if you haven't used a graphical calculator before, this is quite a common thing that, you know, just basic stuff will get saved and it kind of like builds up as you go, okay? So, and results on the right-hand side. One of the neat things is that, you know, the way that you can move around, it's kind of like a games controller. So you can move up and down, and you can see that I'm highlighting 6 here, for example. And sometimes when you do that, these 3 dots appear. And that means that there's more stuff. So if you go right, and you go, okay, I want to go on to that, then some of the stuff that kind of links up with stuff like in computer science, it writes it for you in hexadecimal, in binary, it tells you prime factors, so it kind of gives you more information about your results. Now, on the plus side for that, on things like for complex numbers, for example, so something that you are doing in further maths, if you had 2 plus, now this is the difference with the Classwiz, it has an I button and you don't need to put it into complex mode. So 2 plus 3i, for example. If I go up and then I go along and select the 3 dots, it draws you the Argand diagram representing where 2 plus 3i actually is. You can scroll down and it will give you the modulus, it will give you the argument. This is stuff that you're probably just doing in further maths now, in first year further. So it's got all of that information there for you. And if you want to use any part, you know, I'm selecting parts as I move around. If you want to use that, I just press execute and it brings it into the calculation window. So if you want to use it, then you can as part of a calculation. So it all works quite intuitively. Now, other bits that you can do, and a secondary thing that's nice about it is that when you write this down, it gives you the exact form and the decimalised form at the same time. So you don't need to press an SD button to convert. So other things that your Classwiz can do, that this can also, is things like the integral button, the differentiation button, you know, where is all of that? Because when you look at the actual calculator, those buttons don't appear to be there. You might be going, oh, well, maybe it can't do that. Well, everything like that is kept within the toolbox. The toolbox is near the top right-hand corner. You can't quite see it from there, but when you click on it, it has your absolute value, your nth root, log base A. It goes into calculus, so just go right. There's your differentiation. There's your integral buttons. Okay. If I go back out of that, complex numbers as well. It's got all of that side if you need to do it that way. There are bits with probability, with conversion of units. The bit that I like to show off, especially for further math students, is the matrices bit. So I go into new matrix. Now, if you've ever done this on a Classwiz to build up a matrix, it's a bloody nightmare. The amount of buttons that you need to press. What's great about this is that you can kind of see, you might not be able to see it, it's kind of like just shaded squares. So it's gone for a 2x2 to start off with. And as you build it up and move around, it gets larger as you need it to. So if I need a 3x3 matrix, you can see that it builds it up and it goes, oh, you haven't put anything in that box yet, I need that as well. Okay, and the matrix grows to whatever size you need it to be. Okay, and I press execute and it's ready. If you then want to find the determinant of the matrix, the inverse of the matrix, well, I go up to it, I go to the 3 dots, and there it is. There's the determinant, there's the inverse, right? I don't need to go into a separate bit and ask for it. So it's all here available to you. There is extra bits that we don't need. So row echelon form and reduced row echelon form, for example, is stuff that you would deal with at a high level. Okay, so there's a little bit extra there that we don't need. Okay, so there's the bit with matrices. Let's just look in that catalogue just to see if there was anything else that I missed that would be worthwhile. Let's just see what's in the trig. So there's hyperbolic trig in there, so there's shine, cosh and than. And advanced, you've got cosec, sec, cot as well. You've actually got the inverses of those as well. So they're all there. So that's perfect for second year A-level maths. Okay, so the calculation window is very accessible. It's just you need to like play around with it to see kind of like if you go up, what happens? If I select that, what happens? Okay, but if you play with it, you can see those bits come to fruition. Okay, right. So that's the calculation window. Obviously, because it's a graphing calculator, you'll probably want to see what the graphing capabilities are like. So all the graphing stuff is in functions. Okay, so, right, add a function. Now, you can actually start typing in immediately rather than pressing the execute. You can do that shortcut there. So let's say I wanted x squared. So there's a button up here that has all your variables, x and squared. Plot graph. There it is. Okay, y equals x squared. Then let's say I wanted to do, let's say I wanted a tangent line to the x squared curve. So you can see that I'm moving from the graph and I go upwards and everything is moved around using these cursors. So I can go along and change the axes if I want them to. I could go along to calculus. Calculate. It will calculate maximums, minimums, zeros where it crosses the x-axis. Tangent line. Right, so it draws you the tangent line and tells you for each x value what the a and the b would be. So if I wanted to know what the tangent line was at x equals 4, type in 4, you can see that's changed down there, execute, and it goes straight to that one. Okay, so I don't need to do loads of button presses to get there. Let's try an integral. Go to calculus, calculate, let's go down to integral. So if I set it at 4 and I wanted to find the integral to, let's say, what should we go to, 5? It actually draws on the area that you are considering and tells you what that value is. So you can either do it through the integral button on the calculation window that I showed, or you can do it on here, okay, and you can visually see it. Now you can add on to this. So if I go back up to functions, so you can see that you can mix to table as well, so it gives you the table of values if you want. Or if I go back up to functions, I could draw on another line, so let's add a function. Let's do y equals x plus 2. Plot the graph. Okay, there are my two lines, or my line and my curve. Let's find out where they intersect. Go up to calculus, select one of them, calculate, intersection. So they intersect x equals -1, and x equals 2. Okay, that's all there. So it's quite powerful stuff, really, to be able to solve that quite quickly. Right, what else should I show you? For second year further maths students, you might want to be interested in things like polar graphs. So let's delete that one. And if I just go and hover over this, I can select it and change it to a different curve type. So I can go to polar curves, I can go to parametric curves. Let's just see what that looks like. Not very interesting. Let's go to auto. Oh, and we get nice spirals as well. So it can plot your polar curves. So all I did there was I changed the axes by just going up to auto, and it will fit it for you, okay, intelligently. So we've got that. Okay, so you've got all access to the graphs and being able to visualize these. Right, what about solving simultaneous equations, for example? I mean, the Classwiz is able to do, so if I go to equations, it's able to do 2 linear equations. This can do that as well. What's neat about this is that you can change the letters. So you remember when you're doing simultaneous equations, it's not necessarily in terms of x and y, it might be in terms of a and b. So you've got the letters on each button that you can utilize. So if I had 3a plus 8b and then equals 1, and then add another equation, let's go with 6a take away 5b equals 7. Solve the system, and it tells me the answers. Okay, tells me how to solve those simultaneous equations, and you can write them in any lettering you want. Whereas on the Classwiz, it's only x's and y's that you've got to deal with. Now, one of the best features, I would say, of this is that, and that's different to the Classwiz, is where you can solve equations and it will find you all of the possible solutions within a range. Now, there can be a little bit of problem because of the numerical method it's using, but in general, for the equations you've got to deal with, it'll find them. So let's say I wanted to solve sine of x is equal to, let's say, 0.3. Okay? Now I'm in degrees, okay? So I'm going to go down to solve the equation, and I'm going to tell it to find all of the solutions between 0 and 720 degrees. There they all are. Okay? So in an exam, I can type the equation into my calculator, and I can double check that I'm getting all of the correct solutions. Okay? Whether I'm in degrees or radians. So that's really neat, really useful. So we've looked at calculation, we looked at functions, we looked at equations. The statistics side is kind of quite similar to what you use on a Classwiz with a table of values. So I'm just going to type some ones in, so 5, 9, 8, 2, 5 and 6, for example. Then if I go up here, you can see I can get a histogram if I want it, okay, or I can go along to box plot. If I want a box plot, draws one of those. But usually you probably just want the stats. So you go into the stats, and it will tell you pretty much the same information that the Classwiz does. So the number of different items that you have, 6. The minimum value, maximum value, range, the mean, the standard deviation. The neat thing is that it actually tells you what those bits are, so you won't ever get confused between whether you're looking at the standard deviation or the variance on there. It does have the sample standard deviation as well, right down the bottom. Okay, so it's got that as well, so that's not missing. So that's all there. It's very easy to use and fine. Right, now the regression side also is kind of very similar, and I'm not going to go into that, but it's very similar to use. The other big thing is the probability, right? So far, if you've done first year A-level maths, and you might be in your second year, you will have looked at the binomial distribution. In the second year, you also look at the normal distribution. In further maths, you also look at the uniform distribution, the chi-squared distribution, and the geometric and the Poisson. Okay, so they work in very similar ways on here, but the great thing about this compared with the Classwiz is that this can find you greater than or equals to, right, for binomial, which the Classwiz can't. So you go into binomial. Let's say I've got 30 as n, and the p is 0.6. Next. It draws you the graph. It shows you what it looks like. So if I want less than or equal to 16, you can see the number that's highlighted, okay? And it will show you on the graph what it looks like and tell you your probability straight out. If you want to do greater than or equals to, or equals to, just play around with where your buttons can go, where the arrows can go. So clearly, because I can click on that, I can change it. And I can do in between, I can do greater than or equals to, or equals to. So if I want greater than or equals to, and I want greater than or equal to 18, there it is, okay? So that's really useful. Now, thinking towards binomial hypothesis testing, right? If you need to do, one of the worst things of binomial hypothesis testing is critical region when you're looking at the top tail. Now, you'll notice that when I move my arrows, because I can highlight that one, maybe I can change that. Because there's no inverse binomial or on the calculator as a separate function. So you change the probability. So let's say I was looking at 5%, the top end. And it tells me where the critical region's going to be. Okay, so I don't need to do much calculation at all. So it's telling me that greater than or equal to 23 is that. It's closest fitted it. So that means that 23 and above will be in my critical region. So it's really quick at being able to identify that. I'll show you quickly the normal distribution, although no one's going to have met it quite yet. But if the mean, it's all governed by the mean, so let's say 200, and standard deviation, let's put that as 30. Okay, so if I do less than or equal to 160, it gives you the probability and shades it in, and in the same way I can select that and look for in between or greater than, depending on what I want to do. Yeah.
Sorry, so what was the specific formula for normal deviation?
What, the normal distribution?
Oh, sorry, normal distribution, sorry.
It involves E, and it involves... I can show you the formula for it. Don't worry, you don't need to know it or ever use it, right? Because the calculator, because all you need to rely on are using the calculator to be able to calculate values. You'll never need it to do otherwise. Okay. So that, in a nutshell, is what the Numworks can do. There are other bits as well. It can do sequences, depending on what you want to use it for. So if you wanted to add a sequence in, then you can do nth term sequences and recurrence relations as well. Okay, you can also do second order, but we don't deal with that in A-level maths. But un plus 1, for example, is equal to un, so let's do un plus 5. So it takes the previous term and adds 5, and I want to start at the number 1. Okay, and then you can plot the graph and it shows you the sequence. Pop, 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 pop. Okay, or you can go to a table and it will tell you the sequence that way. So what I recommend is that you have the app on your phone if you haven't bought one. Okay, play around with it, see what you can do, but there's loads of features there that I've gone through pretty quickly. That's why I filmed it, just so that you can look back at this afterwards. Okay, does anyone have any questions of things that they thought of that the Classwiz can do that they're wondering if this can do? So if you wanted to do, okay, let's take a look at that, graph transformations. So if I go to functions, let's get rid of that one. I'll just change that back over to Cartesian. Okay, so let's say I had sine of x. That's usually a good one to work with. So let's say fx was sine of x. If I'm going to add a function, then I wanted to do, let's say, what is 2f of x, for example. Okay, so on here I can do 2f of x and then you can plot your graph and you can see that it's been stretched parallel to the y-axis factor 2. Okay, you can go back and you could, oh, whoops, went too far. I could have gone here and instead done, oh, what is it, f of 2x? And I can see that it's been stretched factor 1/2 parallel to the x-axis. Okay, so yes, you can do graph transformations on it and see what has happened to those graphs. Yeah. Anything else?
When you typed in f of x a second ago, you just typed that in by typing, or did you?
Yes, all I did was type it in. So because of the letters that are on top of your values here, so f is there, I just do alpha, then that button, and that brings up f. And I can type in f of x.